Welcome to Leadership Unfiltered, the podcast where real leaders get real about what it takes to succeed in today's fast-paced corporate world. I'm Dr. Dayan Douse, founder and president of P.R.I.D.E Consulting, a human behavior and development company serving as an executive coach and facilitator, working with organizations to deliver practical ways to evolve teams, advance organizations, and transform cultures. I hold a PhD in organization and management with over 2 decades of leadership experience in Fortune 500 companies. And I'm best-selling co-author of the book, Nothing But Net. I'm joined by my co-host, Phillip Smith. And Phillip is a seasoned technology executive with extensive experience leading large-scale engineering teams and driving digital transformation. Over his 25 years of leadership experience, he has held multiple roles from supervisor to vice president. His personal brand is coder by blood, architect by trade, and leader by choice. Every episode will deliver real-world strategies, unfiltered advice, and the tools you'll need to take your leadership to the next level. Let's get started. All right, so today's topic is micromanagement. And boy, have I had some experiences with micromanagement. I hope. I haven't been throughout my career a micromanager, but I thought today's topic would be a good topic to dig into. So let's start by some of the signs and kind of let you know if you're a micromanager. So you say, well, I don't micromanage. That's not me. Well, let me just give you some things to think about to see if you really are a micromanager. So some of the signs are simple things like you require to be copied on all the emails, or you overcomplicate your communication to the team. Your instruction to the team is really complicated. It's because you're trying to do too much in your communication, not trusting your team with understanding where they need to go. And so you overcomplicate the communication and instruction. That's micromanagement. If after their work is done, you go back and revise it, you're a micromanager. If you're sitting listening to this and you say, that's not me, none of those things are me, I don't know who that is, it's probably you. So, now, I should say that there are times when the stakes are high, when there's deadlines that you have to be, as a leader, on top of things and involved. That is different than micromanaging. Micromanagement happens on a daily, frequent basis where you are controlling every ounce or every aspect of that team. And so there are some issues with micromanaging. That team, you stifle innovation when you micromanage, creativity, and quite honestly, productivity. That you just don't get the level of productivity that you could out of a team when you are having to be in all of the activities that team is going through. So those are some of the just things I was thinking about when we decided to discuss the topic of micromanagement.
Yeah, I have a simple test for micromanaging. And you spoke a bit about it around, do you revise the work of the team, and are the directions clear? And for me, the test of whether or not I'm being micromanaged or whether I'm micromanaging, it has to do with, the test for me, it has to do with how do you manage conflict.
Ooh.
if when something arises in the team and the adjudicator of every conflict in the team is the leader, that leader is a micromanager. If the leader teaches their team how to handle conflict without them, not to say that the leader can't step in when necessary, to your point. There are times when the leader absolutely has to step in. It shouldn't turn into the Thunderdome, right? There are times absolutely when the leader needs to step in to manage conflict. But if the norm is the leader is the one managing and adjudicating conflict in the team, that leader is a micromanager. And it's a test. It's a litmus test. And so if when something goes wrong in the team and the person who has to step in and solve it is the leader, that leader is a micromanager. If the leader then teaches the team how they can resolve that conflict themselves in the future, moving forward, so that the team's ability to resolve conflict grows over time, that you can tell that that person understands leadership.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great litmus test. And I hadn't thought of that. So I'm going to have to use that going forward. But that's a great way for me to know if I'm micromanaging. And as you were talking and sharing that litmus test, I thought of a time in my career when I had a micromanager, and of the worst kind. She literally sat right next to me, and one of the things I didn't say is usually that micromanager is always, quote unquote, looking over your shoulder. Well, she physically looked over my shoulder all of the time, every single day, corrected things, as I'm trying to work through them. So stopping my productivity, very critical. Never really talked about things that I was doing well, but always gave that criticism. And it felt like nothing I did was right. And that level of scrutiny and micromanagement and not really teaching me and preparing me to handle conflict or problems going forward, always having to turn to her when there was an issue. Literally, this lady left me physically with hives. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom and looking in the mirror, and there were red dots all over my body. And so I was freaking out, like, what is going on? And it turns out that just my dealing with that level of micromanagement on a daily basis was having a physical impact on me that I thought I was handling it okay, but my body was saying, no, you're not handling this that well at all. And so I tried different techniques, to try to deal with the micromanagement. And the only thing that got me through it is, and I worked with her for over a year. It was kind of, she had a larger team, but because we sat right next to each other, it felt like it was just her and I. And she was always there, always looking over my shoulder. And I was in the lunchroom one day, just kind of sitting by myself, trying to figure out what to do, how to deal with this. And a table with about 3 employees sitting next to me were complaining about similar things with this same leader. And I'm listening, I'm like, that's me. And so I said, can I join you guys? And that became like a therapy session that we all got a chance to talk, but it wasn't just me. Like, she was impacting an entire team with this leadership style. And what we figured out is that she really just lacked leadership skills. She lacked trust in us as a team, and really trust in her ability to not only manage us, but to manage up, because I'm sure she was getting pressure.
Yep.
And just figured, this team had to execute on everything so that she could, look good for her bosses. And so lack of confidence on her behalf. And what we found out in that kind of group session is that she wasn't delegating any task. She was actually running everything through, she would give it to us, but her micromanagement was just us doing it her way. And so after a little over a year, I ended up moving on and kept in touch with that group, and other people began to move on into their careers. And I'm not sure what happened to that leader, but if you're out there, it was not a good experience, and you know who you are. But I learned a lot from that.
And you said something, you hinted at something, and I want to pull it up a bit.
Yeah.
And because what's underneath that, in terms of how does that happen? Like, how do you get to a place where you're a micromanager? And it comes from a lack of leadership skills. And that fundamentally comes from, oftentimes, people get promoted into positions where they're not prepared for them, because they were great from a technical perspective. They get promoted into a leadership position without understanding that leadership is a separate acumen. Leadership requires an equal investment in developing those skills. And most organizations don't appreciate that. I don't think most people appreciate that. What they see oftentimes is, oh, this is my opportunity. This is my opportunity to show that I can do this. And that is a trap.
Yes.
Thinking that this is your opportunity to show creates a lot of stress, creates a lot of pressure. And then if you are already a perfectionist, it will kick that into high gear. And even if you're not a perfectionist, it will cause you to think about driving to a quality of results that is out of an alignment with what the organization needs at that time. And so that additional pressure that you're placing on yourself, saying that this is my opportunity to demonstrate that I can do this, right, allows you to then transfer that pressure to your employees in a not healthy way, by looking over their shoulder, to your point, by making sure that they're doing it right, and making sure, checking everything and wanting to be included in everything, because this is your opportunity.
Yes. Yes.
You cannot lead and think that this is your opportunity. You cannot lead making it about yourself, because that's not what leadership is. Leadership is about the team. It's about creating an environment where they are successful. And if you're coming from a place where this is about me, then you're already trapped into the cycle of micromanaging. That's not the only source, but it has been my experience that that's where what's underneath a lot of it. Leading a micromanager and getting them to see that they are micromanaging is a journey that I've taken a couple of times. Being a leader of leaders and seeing that they didn't have the leadership skills. that they were creating additional stress. And sometimes the answer is you no longer get to lead until you've made that investment. Or really asking the question, is this for you? Right? Now that you know what leadership is, this is for you.
Yes.
And then sometimes they go through that awakening that leadership isn't about proving. Leadership is about creating an environment for your team to succeed. And that if you are able to get that change to happen, their leadership style naturally adjusts.
Right.
But if their leaders don't see that and all their leaders are doing is applying more pressure, then that person is just continuing the cycle.
Right. That's good. That's good. You brought up a point about moving into leadership and not having those skills. And what came to mind for me is being the expert in that space. You've been doing that job for a long time. You know the processes. You do that job well.
Yes.
And many companies make the mistake of promoting that person because they know that space. They've done that job. They've actually raised their hand.
Yes.
And they said, yeah, this is your next progression. And never really taking a look to see if that leader is ready, or if that person is ready for leadership, and providing them opportunities to lead in that space before they make the move, right? So there are ways to test, to prepare that person for leadership before you actually give them the role. Right? So whether it be a project or a special project or activity that you can put them in that gives them the space to figure out what leadership is without it being punitive.
Yes.
Right? And so they get to decide before they actually take on the role if it's for them or not. Because it's hard putting somebody in a space. I shouldn't say it's hard. It is costly to the company to put a person in a position, figure out after they're in the position that this is not a good fit for them, and then try to figure out what to do with them from there. There was cost in all of the background things to move them into that position. It's going to be cost to move them someplace else, whether it's out of that position or into another department. There's cost to the team. There's a lot of cost. There's a lot of investment that goes into moving somebody from an individual contributor to a leader. And it's not just they were an expert in the role. So that when you said that, I'm thinking a lot of companies make the mistake of moving people into leadership before they're ready, just because they were expert in the things that they were doing as an individual contributor.
And those costs are real and high.
Yes.
And I think the organizations that culturally do this well make an investment in leadership development programs. But not everyone has the resources to create leadership development programs. Not everyone has that size and scope to be able to do that. But there are still some things that you can do to create the space for leaders to lead. As one of the things is the organization is a reflection of its leader.
Yes.
Period. Full stop.
So true.
It's a reflection of its leader. And you get what you reward, recognize, and tolerate. So it's really important that the leaders of leaders understand what are they recognizing, what are they rewarding, what are they tolerating. Because even if you don't create a structured program around leadership development, which I believe you should absolutely do, but even if you don't do that, just built into the culture is, are you rewarding, are you recognizing folks that are micromanagers? Are you tolerating micromanagement?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are, that's why those things happen. And the way that you stop that is one by recognizing what part of you is acknowledging that. Are you rewarding people that make sure that everything is perfect? Because in order for it to be perfect, it's got to be micromanaged.
Right.
Or is it good enough?
Yes.
Right? Because again, just the basic 80-20 rule, you'll spend 80% of your resources on that last 20%. And if you're rewarding people who are spending 80% of their time on that 20%, you're going to get a lot of micromanagers.
Yes.
And so you want to look at what are the things that you as a leader are rewarding, recognizing, and tolerating. Because that is what's going to be your culture.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And changing culture and changing is hard, but it starts with you. And then you then have to, work with your respective teams in terms of how to get them to shift their mindset. Because micromanagement is an artifact of fear. It's an artifact of someone not feeling safe.
Yes.
I've got a CYA. I've got to make sure that this is right. This is my opportunity. If my team doesn't do this correctly, I am going to take the fall, take the hit for it. I'm going to look bad.
Yes.
And so all of that stems from this fear. And what is the leadership doing to alleviate that? Because true excellence does not come from perfection.
Right. Such a good point.
True excellence comes from being able to find value in the failure and the learning that comes from it.
Yes.
Because if you are keeping your team from learning, right? Because that's fundamentally what micromanagement does, which is why I go back to the litmus test, which is if you are keeping your team from learning in order for you to look good, in order for you to maximize your opportunity, in order for fill in the blank, then you aren't leading.
Right.
And that's a difficult thing to see and look in the mirror and go, what role am I playing in how all of this is unfolding?
That's good. And for those who are, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, leading a micromanager.
Yes.
Some of the coaching that I've provided leaders who are in that situation is really three things to look at, and you touched on really one of the big ones. But first, if I'm leading somebody that's a micromanager, it starts with awareness. And that awareness is all around providing the feedback to them that they are micromanaging, giving them some examples of where they're micromanaging. And so they now have to be aware that this is the environment that they're creating.
Yes.
Second is intention. And you just talked about what is the intention of their micromanaging. Why are you micromanaging? It's the fear, right? It's the lack of trust of your team. And then part of that feedback is giving them the impact of that intention. So you got awareness that you are micromanaging. You got intention of why you're doing it, the impact of it. And then it's really up to that leader to confront that.
Yes.
And the confront is really, in its simplest form, is holding up a mirror.
Yes.
And looking yourself in the mirror and say, what is it that I need to change? This is about me, because sometimes with the best of intentions and feedback and knowing where you are as a micromanager, you begin to point at external things as the issue. And he said, well, if the team would, or if my boss would, or if the company would, the organization would, then I wouldn't be having this conversation. It's not about me, right? I'm not really micromanaging, right? But confronting is simply saying there's something here that I need to change about the way I'm leading. And that's really the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness and the intention
Mm-hmm.
are all setting you up for confronting and figuring out where you need to make that change. And then as the leader of that leader who's micromanaging is offering that level of support to say, okay, you just said it, change is hard, particularly individual change is hard. So I'm going to support you in this. And so we're going to work through this feedback and where you tell me you want to make these changes.
Yes.
I'm going to recognize whether, there's some things that you are progressing and making the necessary changes, but there's some things that you are still not aware of, still not focused on, still not making the necessary changes. And so I'm going to offer that level of support so that we get you there, so that you can lose the need and the fear that you've got to micromanage this team.
And we've talked about micromanagement holistically, but I want to pull it in a bit to say you can not be a micromanager in some parts of your leadership and be a micromanager in others.
Yes.
I use a personal example for myself, which was I got feedback from my coach that I was micromanaging my team around executive communication. And not something I wanted to hear. Because I vehemently disagreed.
Yeah.
Like, I am not a micromanager.
Yes.
What are you talking about? I'm the opposite of a micromanager. And my coach was like, let's unpack that. And gave me, after observing, my coach would come in and observe the team periodically, and she said, yeah, you are great at most of the areas in terms of micromanaging, or in terms of not micromanaging your team, but in terms of executive communication. If something is going to the senior executive team, you micromanage that. And you made the comment about something being a pixel off in the presentation. And of course, my response was, well, it was a pixel off.
Yes.
And the thoughts weren't aligning. And now, of course, I have probably a hypersensitivity to visual presentations, more so than probably a typical person, given my background in graphic design. But setting all that aside, she was right. She was 100% right. When it came to things that would go to the board of directors, or when it came to things that would go to the chief, the C-suite, my perfectionism kicked into high gear, and I wanted it pixel perfect. And that, unfortunately, was bleeding into other areas. Because when you micromanage one part, it will inherently bleed into others. And while I felt I was great in terms of not micromanaging my team on whole, that one piece caused me to unpack it, because again, it's based in fear. There is a fear that kicks in where you feel it has to be right, and it switched from being about the team and helping the team learn how to do executive presentations to it being about me and making sure that I looked good.
Yes. Yes.
And whenever that flip happens, you stop leading. You stop leading. And while I was incredibly grateful to my executive coach in terms of helping me see that gap in my leadership, eventually, it's so important and so salient because it's not all, right? And so labels can be tricky. So,
Yes.
And so while you may not accept the label micromanager,
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean you're not micromanaging.
It's good.
And so I think that's something else that we know it's important that we consider.
That's good. Oh, I love that. I love that. Not labeling someone because they may not see themselves as a micromanager. But to your point, there are areas they are micromanaging.
Yes.
And we brought up earlier how, given the task, situation, high stakes, sometimes it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself a micromanager or didn't, but I know there were times that I was micromanaging,
Mm-hmm.
and I was deliberate about those times when I could recognize it up front. And I'm sure there are other times that I was micromanaging that people were like, dude, get off my back. I got this. But when I was deliberate about it, I was trying to learn that process as well. So I was in the meetings, in the design sessions, trying to figure out what was going on. Understanding that as a leader, as their leader, when you're in the room, it creates a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really, if it weren't for the case where I was trying to learn it myself, I probably should have backed out of that room to give them the space to just create and do what I knew they could do without me. And so my deliberate behavior was to call it out when I recognized it, to say, hey, I'm not in here as, trying to take over. I'm just trying to learn as well. And it may seem like I'm micromanaging, but I'm here trying to learn this process too, so that going forward, I can step out and I can be comfortable that you guys got it. I'm not comfortable because I really don't know what you guys are doing. I got confidence in you that you'll get it done, but until I actually know what you're doing, I just need to be part of the process. And some might have, given me feedback to say that you're micromanaging. You don't really need to be here. But when I called it out, they were comfortable. They appreciated the input and the learning. And then I could step away saying, okay, they're in step 3. I know what step 3 looks like, feels like, and I know they got it. And they'll call me in when they need me.
Yeah, and I think it's the awareness piece.
Yes.
And so while there are absolutely going to be, going back to my example around presentations, there are absolutely presentations that need to be pixel perfect. But are you aware that that's what it is, so that you can show up the way you need to show up? And
can you call that out?
And be
involved.
Exactly. And I wasn't. And that was the problem. The problem is, so there may be a presentation that needs to go to our customers, for example, that does need to be pixel perfect, right? Because we're talking to our customers who give us money, who pay our salaries, and you want to make sure that that's right. And sometimes you need that high level of scrutiny. But when it's the default, when it's the norm, and it's not being deliberate, and you're not calling it out, that's when there's an issue. And so I think that awareness is so important. And you tell the story, and there are times when, because I'm a developer, I will go in and I'll help pair program, right? And so because I'm the leader, me writing code next to a programmer can feel like micromanaging.
Yes.
But that was one of the times when I was very deliberate about it, where I was saying, no, we got to get this done. We need an extra pair of hands. I have the skills. I'm not here to watch you code because I don't trust that you can do this.
Yes.
I'm here to help you as a fellow developer.
Yes.
And that bought me so much more credibility. One, because they realized I can still do it. But second, I was explicit about it.
Yes.
I was very clear why I'm here.
Yes.
And, as a fellow developer, they welcomed me in and I could do that. But yeah, I think it's that awareness piece,
Yes.
the saying and being explicit about it, that can change the dynamic.
Yes.
So
excellent. All right, so we just want to leave you guys with no labels here, right? Doesn't mean you're a micromanager, but there are cases where you might be micromanaging. And if that is the case, and it's called for, the takeaway is just to be deliberate and explicit about your support and input into that process, and to be aware that this calls for, as a leader, your level of input, or be aware that you're lacking some leadership skills there, or trust in your team, and that you truly are micromanaging that particular situation, and you need to ask yourself why, and then try to step out of that and delegate to your team, because in the long run, they will be far more productive and engaged and innovative if they have a leader that they know trusts them to do what they have been hired and paid to do. All right.
thanks for tuning in to Leadership Unfiltered. We hope you have found value in our conversation and are ready to take action in your leadership journey. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. And don't forget to connect with us on social media for more leadership insights and resources. Until next time, keep leading with purpose.